Hi, I'm Rob Moyer, and this is what you should know. And today we're going to go the distance. We're going to travel or sail across the waters of Drake's Passage from Chile to Antarctica and back again. So this was an expedition that I took in January and late January and into early February. Nope, not that picture. Ah, yes. So this is Fin del Mundo, the bottom of the world. Welcome. It's Porto Williams in the bottom of Chile. And this is Maurice. And Maurice was our coordinator. He worked it so that the authorities would allow us to leave Chile and return again. And because Porto Williams is a naval station of Station Beagle, we had to work with the Coast Guard as well. And the amazing thing about this little town is that they've got horses and cattle just wandering around wild. The cattle go into barns, the horses just are wild and they're out all winter. And this is on the ship, which I'll introduce in a minute, looking back at Porto Williams. And you can see that there's some gray naval ships there. And it's the southernmost significant town in Chile. So we got underway, and this is the Beagle Channel. So to the north of us are the Straits of Magellan. I stopped at Puerto Arenas, which is on the Straits of Magellan, and the straits are so wide you can't see the other shore. But here, we're looking north with Porto Williams, Chile behind us, and that's Argentina on the other side of the Beagle Channel. And then this island in between with the sunlight on it is called the Gables because it's got these triangular shaped rock formations that you can barely see etched out there in the rock. And these are that. Well, yeah, I'm trying to get a screenshot of them. Breaking the water. Video really shows it. It's called hologram. The camera can't see in the water as well as my eyes can. Oh, wow. Oh, there they go. So we're going down the Drake. We're going down the Drake. We're going down Beagle Channel. And now we've turned south. And we're headed out away from the land. So this is the last land we saw off to the east here. And then about 150 miles to my right is Cape Horn. And it was just too far for us to see that. Right, so Porto Williams is here at the bottom. and then Argentina's on top, and this is Chile. And so you can see how we went out through the Beagle Channel and then south through the islands. And the waters are pretty calm and flat until we got away from land, and it just was like throwing a light switch. And looking at this chart, you can see the continental shelf ends, and that might have been it, because we just stepped off the shelf into this churning deep waves and heavy winds. So we're going to travel from the upper left corner there. It's about 600 miles to the South Shetland Islands. These are the South Shetland Islands. And then to the east of that is Elephant Island. And Shackleton, Ernest Shackleton and his crew lost Endeavour somewhere here in the Ross Sea. And they found it at the bottom of the ocean just last year or something. Preserved, the water so cold. So they had to go in small boats north to I think this was all frozen, this end of the Palmer Peninsula here. But then they had to sail in their small boats out to Elephant Island, and then on the very eastern shores there's a little spit of land, and that's where the men stayed for several months while Shackleton and two other people, the three of them, Worsley and I forget who the third one was, they sailed just a lifeboat all the way to South Georgia Island here, landed on the backside, had to climb over the top and come into the whaling town on St. George's. And there they were getting ships, and they got back to Porto Williams and Punta Arenas, and eventually got a ship that Captain Pardo took, a Scottish-built ship that was belonging to Chile, and went down and rescued all the men. So Shackleton didn't lose anyone on his voyage, which he had hoped to go to the South Pole. But the fact that the endurance of surviving that is just phenomenal. So, okay, so we're going to sail down to the Elizabeth Islands, to English Channel is separating the middle of the islands there. And then we're going to hang west and go 2 islands down over to Yankee Harbor. And then after that, we're going to go down to this little round spot that I'll tell you about when we get there. And then we're going to work our way along the Palmer Peninsula to the Anvers Island is the biggest island. And we're going to stop at the very southeast corner here of Anvers Island. And then head home. So the head home is like 800 miles versus 600 miles, except we don't sail as the crow flies. We sail more like the albatross because while sailing down, the winds are blowing from the west here, and there's no landmass, so it just blow round and around the world north of the Antarctica here. And so the heavy west winds mean that we steer more westerly, and we end up going more southerly. So we would go a bit, and then we would also be pushed, and so we'd have to go a bit more. So it's much more mileage than you would think by just drawing a straight line between them. This is the crew. Well, there were 8 of us on the boat, and this is my watch. So Raphael was from Spain on the left. Renee is a paid crew, and she's Dutch. And there's me, and then Dirk is another crew member like me and Raphael on the watch there. And because there were only 8 of us, we had to stand 6-hour watches. So we would be on from 6 to midnight, and then from 6 in the morning till noon, and then at 6 in the evening until midnight. And round we went, about 5 days going across the Drake Passage to the South Shetland Islands. And then for the 7 days back, we stood the other watch, so 6 a.m. to noon, noon to 6, and then midnight to 6 in the morning. So we got to see the sunrise. It does get dark there. the Palmer Peninsula is pretty far north. I think the 60th parallel is somewhere down about here or something. So, and it was probably February 1st by the time we were south of the 60th parallel. So it got dark every night. And of course, coming south, we got to see the Southern Cross and stuff, and the stars. When there was starlight, there was a lot of clouds, as you can see in this picture here. So this is the sailing ship Tecla, and it's a ketch, which means that the mast is the bigger sail, has the mast is the main mast here, and it's in front of the mizzen sail. A schooner has the bigger mainsail on the way back and the mizzen forward. So here, crossing the roughest waters in the world, we never hoisted the mainsail. Instead, well, we had the mizzen sail there, and if you look carefully, you can see that there's a string hanging out here, and that's because the sail has been shortened, lowered down, and then the extra sailcloth has been supposed to be tied around the boom with these ties, and this one keeps coming undone. So we always had a reef in the mizzen, and the mizzen actually has a gaff, like the mainsail. A gaff is this big spar across the top there. So it means that your sail area is not very high up the boat, so it's not tipping the boat as much. It's more driving it forward by being gaff rigged. And then the front of the boat, we have the jib, which is out here, and this is not called a boom. This is not a bowsprit. This is the jib boom, because there's a loop here, and you can pull the jib boom in if you want to dock close to somebody in front of you. So it's movable. And then these are slats of wood that are put into this is probably spruce or Douglas fir or something. So the wood's kind of soft, and so those strips are to wear out before the actual wood of the spar of the jib boom wears out. And then we have a staysail, and the staysail is set behind the jib, and it has a boom that's attached to the other end of the other corner of the staysail there. And so the way we increased or decreased sail was to raise and lower the jib, because it was the smallest sail and it's easier to handle than the bigger sails. So this is the best sailing conditions right now. It's not pouring rain and it's not too windy because everything's dry. Yeah, and so here we are back at the steering wheel, the helm, and looking forward, the mainsail in the foreground here, and some wrinkles of the sail that have, there it's tied up again. So the sail's been shortened. And then no mainsail, and then I can see the staysail up there. I can't tell the jib set or not because it's in front of the staysail. And yeah, the wind and rain just pelt you, so you want to cover up your face, unless you have a beard like I do. And so they are just out of the picture here. This is the binnacle. This is an upright that has the compass in there, so we're able to steer by compass course. And then this piece of wood here is is blocking the stern light. So there's a light looking behind the boat, but we don't want the people on deck to be blinded by the light or to lose their night vision. So all the running lights are shielded, so they point away from the boat. And yeah, so here we are on a good 4.7 or 4.6. And this is how you drink coffee in 4.6. You can't really the only place you can put your cup down is to the right of me in the picture there is the main sheet's been coiled up on the cabin housing there. So you could nestle the coffee cups into that, and they would be there at the end of the watch to take down below to have washed or something. And so I took some footage of a very windy day that wasn't pouring rain, but I still have got water. You'll see water on the camera and stuff. So this is about a 4.7. The interesting thing about sailing in the Cape is you never see the wave crest so far apart. That's like in the European all around the world. So if you were to go left, which would be this is on the Queen's Wharf, to the west, you could go all the way around the world and come back to the other railing of the ship without touching any land. So the westerly winds, and the winds are blowing west because the north winds blow west. And it's interesting, but that's what I was saying, the crests are far apart. And it could be because of the fetch, the distance of the winds is not long. That the seas didn't feel rough. The valleys are just waves or the waves are coming up and I got this feeling that the captain steered the boat on this. And he but we got the feeling that they were taking the boat out of speed because the waves in the valley find a way bring it back on course, you would push it, bring it back. You would bring it back on course, picking your way along. And this is on a calmer day, but I'm trying to photograph the albatrosses, the seabirds that are coming around the boat. Black-browed albatross. So they have a white head and a black eyebrow. It's about a 7-foot, 7.5-foot wingspan. And these guys nest right in where we were in the Beagle Channel. So they, so you see a lot. We saw they were the most frequent albatross, but we're worried about their population because it's just very good right here, but it's not that good overall. They are more threatened than, say, the wandering albatross, which I did see, but I didn't get a good picture of it, and they all look the same pretty much. This is a giant petrel. So this little guy's got a 7-foot wingspan, and I don't know when they stopped calling them albatrosses and start calling them petrels. They're all in the same family of tube nose, which means they have these tubes on top of the bill that can secrete salt. So if they swallow seawater, they manage to pull some salt out and be able to metabolize with the water. You and I can't do that when we swallow seawater. Not a good idea. And I put this picture up because I thought it was maybe a black albatross, but the more I look at it, the more I think it's a giant fulmar. They all straighten their wings out like that. At the top of the screen is a little sea petrel. And this is the most numerous, Wilson's petrel is the most numerous bird in the world because it's found in all oceans. And this one is not showing its feet. And Wilson will trail its feet behind its tail. So that means it's the Antarctic petrel. Otherwise, you just can't tell them apart. It does help the fact that we're approaching the Antarctic peninsula, the Palmer Peninsula. So they're called petrels after St. Peter. And they will stir the water with their feet while they're flying to get a little plankton to the surface to eat. And so it looks like they're kind of walking on the water. So they're St. Peter's bird or the petrel. So we have come through the South Shetland Islands, and I got up early so I could see, Antarctica looming out of the sea, and it was completely sheer white. You couldn't see the land. The captain was at the wheel, and he said, "Yeah, it's right over there." But we had to go through the islands and then turn westerly, and now we're coming up around into Yankee Harbor. So there's this gravel peninsula coming out, and there's a little bump of a fur seal, but I got a better picture of them later on. And just this, enormous black and white landscape. I mean, the whole Antarctica feels like you're living in a Gothic novel or something, because there's nothing green. The only plants are lichens and mosses. There's an occasional grass, but I never saw it. But when we go ashore, we want to have biosecurity. We don't want to bring any biological stuff from outside of the Antarctica continent to Antarctica. Conversely, we don't want to be exporting Antarctica biological stuff to beyond. So there's 2 tubs there, and the first one's got soapy water in it, and then you step in the fresher one, or the non-soapy one, to rinse off the soap. And so the first animal we found was this leopard seal, just stretched out on the ice. And as we were loading the Zodiac over there, that's our ship Tecla there, when we were loading it up, you could see there was something on this iceberg, and I got the binoculars out, and I thought it was like the size of 2 harbor seals that we have here in Boston Harbor, and it looked like just a couple of seals, but it was just the way he was curled up. He was just one extra long leopard seal. And these guys are the greatest carnivores of the seals. They can take other seals. And so we came ashore on Yankee Harbor, and that it's an old drum, a metal drum of some sort on the left there, right in the tide line. And that goes back to when the whalers were here. They left that behind. They've done a good job of cleaning up the messes from whaling. But there are a few artifacts like that you see. And then these are Gento penguins. And so they pretty much come meet you on the shore. They are not have any fears of people at all. They just figure you're bigger penguins or something. And the other penguin are the chin straps. You can see that they remind me of like British grenadiers with their black hats and their chin strap going around. Yeah, so chin straps. And I guess there's a Gento behind them. And there is a fur seal. They're the ones that can go upright like that. And so that's what we saw sitting upright like that on the gravel bars we were coming into the Yankee Harbor. The rest are Gento penguins. These are elephant seals. So they're bigger than the fur seals, and they're lounging about. And so here you can see the kind of green moss that does manage to grow on the flatter spots of Antarctica. And we all kind of walked along the shore, and we scrambled around this rocky outcropping. And then I took a seat on the rocks because there were penguins there, and they walked on to look at the bottom of a glacier. And I just figured the penguins were so cool. So I just sat down, and before I knew it, there was this penguin next to me on his rock. And here's a video of this guy. So a bunch of penguins are to the left, way up high on the rock. And so he's going to looking up at the penguins. penguins up there on the horizon. Here comes the light brigade. There they are. So now I'm not so young, I can so relate to that penguin trying to scramble over those rocks and worried about footing. So here are the penguins of Antarctica, and the largest, the emperor penguin's on the right, and then the king penguin, and then this is the Gento penguin that we just saw marching around, number 3 from the right, and then the chin straps are a little smaller than the Gento. And the other penguins we never saw. Okay, so we left, we're leaving now Yankee Harbor, which is up there in the South Shetland Islands. And we're going to sail southwest to Deception Island, which is a circular, it's a volcano caldera. And that's why it's so round, because the middle is sunken away. And so it's this enormous, high towering crust of volcanic rock, basalts and stuff. And the opening we're heading for is over here on the left. And I guess they call the openings Neptune's Bellows because the water bellows in and out through there. And then this is Neptune's Window because it's a break in the solid rock escarpment that's surrounding this. And so here's a little video of us coming into desolation. There we are seeing Neptune's window from the other side, having come through Neptune's bellows. Desolation Island. There's an old whaling station there. And then we left in the morning, and leaving places in the morning was their best. I found the best time to hope to see whales. So this is a pair of humpback whales. There are the flukes as he's diving deep. And then we came upon this island. This is not an island. This is an iceberg. And it's covered with penguins. And so I'm going to run the video on this guy. And you'll see a penguin jump off on the left end, and there's all kinds of things going on here. Yeah. Penguins are incredible swimmers. So actually, when we were coming through the fog and whiteness of English Channel, first coming through the South Shetland Islands, Raphael was next to me at the helm there and said, "Oh, we must be near land because there's a fish jumping," and it was a penguin. So here I'm up on deck because we have a humpback whale. I think it's a humpback. We have a whale up ahead. And so you see the whale spout and then see what else is happening. There she blows. They just come out of nowhere. These are penguins. There used to be giant penguins in the ocean, and they only got displaced when mammals moved into the ocean and whales developed. Okay. We went on to Trinity Bay, and that night the snows came down. In the morning there was a good 3 inches of snow on everything. We didn't bring snow shovels, so we found that the paddles for the Zodiac worked pretty good as shovels. You just take the bucket and kind of scoop it along. So we cleared the deck off. You can see the binnacle and the wheel have been covered with canvas before the night before. And then we made our way to a peninsula. I think this is actually on the Palmer Peninsula. So this is my stepping onto the continent of Antarctica, not just an island. And the only intertidal marine life that I found were these limpets. You see there's no barnacles, nothing else, just these limpets. And not much seaweed either, and Mackenzie Lamb found lichens, a marine lichen that lives in the intertidal zone. So it survives under seawater, which is pretty phenomenal. I was sailing with Mackenzie Lamb's book, so I'll get back to that about his discoveries there. He used to live here in Cambridge. Oh yeah, so we got this Weddell seal. So we've got 4 kinds of seals. We have the fur seal we saw first that was upright, and we saw the elephant seal, and we saw the, I guess first we saw the fur seal upright on the gravel bar, and then we saw the leopard seal on the iceberg, and then we saw elephant seals. And so this is the Weddell seal, and it's quite common. It's quite everywhere. And so I was sitting there while the other guys were hiking around somewhere and just enjoying nature and, sharing a space with this guy. And to my right were 2 skuas just sat around and waited for some action to happen. These are seabirds. And then this other Weddell seal is on the other side of the rock, that he waddled up behind those rocks there from the shore. And I figured that's the end of him. Then I saw his tail flippers flapping around in the air. So this is a little vignette So he is off to the racetrack to find higher ground to take a nap. Pick up my mittens there and head on out. So the mittens were the best. They would stay. I had 2 pairs of gloves, and they would last about 45 minutes, and then they get saturated. But the gloves lasted longer, and the mittens lasted longer, and of course, your fingers can warm each other better. So just bring lots of things so you can change. Okay, so we are. Let's see. You can see Deception Island up here at the top. It's circular. And then we went down to Trinity Bay or Trinity Island. And then we went down to this peninsula and saw the Weddell seals. And now we're going to head down Gerlach Strait. Down Anvers Island is the biggest island maybe in Antarctica. No, there's another one over here. It's the biggest island around, I guess. And we're going to go down this little tiny island down here, Lockroy. So that's going to be the southern extent of our voyage. On the way, we came through this field of ice and broken up little bergy bits and ice floe stuff. And there is a leopard seal in the midst of it all, just one lone seal, wondering where the food is. This is the hoist from the bow of the ship. We use it to hoist the anchor onto the railing of the boat. We kind of hang it up. So the capstan pulls up the anchor chain, and then your anchor's kind of hanging down there. So you have to put a hook onto the bottom of it with this chain system, a pulley system that you then pull the chain and it lifts up the last bit of it. Lockroy is a British base that was built during World War II, and they sent out a bunch of scientists out there to study the area, including the great lichenologist Mackenzie Lamb. And so we went ashore, and typical Antarctic day here, snow flurries, and lots of penguins. And the penguins meet you at the door. And inside they had, so they built this cabin with, bunks, and this is their kind of bar, where they also had stamps to stamp your passport and a logbook. And then I've got some postcards there in the foreground, and I bought some stamps that are kind of curling on the edge there. And so I wrote my postcards, and then I'm posting them from Lockroy at the Penguin Post Office. And so it's got a stamp saying Antarctica. They got penguins on the stamp and stuff. And the whole postage from Antarctica began in 1902 when a Scotsman, William Spears Bruce, was assigned to. He's the guy on the far right there in the knickers. And then this is Fritjof Nansen, the great Arctic explorer. And the British the government was great age of exploration, and we got to have Ross out there and Shackleton and all these different people going out against Amundsen and stuff. And the Scots, Bruce in particular, he just wanted to do science. He said, I've got to get out there and start observing and recording and not just planting that rag on the pole everywhere, but, let's get some science out there. And so he got the other Scots to finance this trip. He didn't get any government money, because Scotland government doesn't have any money, I guess. And Shackleton was one of the supporters. And so was Barry, who is the author of Peter Pan. He helped underwrite some of this expedition that William Spears Bruce took down there to Antarctica. And so down there, they met the emperor penguins, and they were so friendly that they tied a rope around the penguin's ankle and then tied it to the piper's ankle so we could get a picture of piping in the penguin. And they tied it to someone else's ankle here because you can see the string. But you can see that the penguin's pretty chill about the whole ordeal, about hanging out with Scotsmen. So they built this stone cabin. They didn't have any wood they had very little wood to spare. So they built this cabin out of a layer of stones, 2 layers of stones, and they packed it with like dirt and stuff in between to try to insulate it. And they did find some stuff to cross the ceiling with, and then they tarred up canvas and made a tarred canvas roof. And then they could collect information on the meteorology and what the weather's like and what's going on in Antarctica. And so Bruce left some guys there, and he sailed back to Puerto Arenas in the Straits of Magellan there, and went to Argentina. No, he went to Argentina. No, where'd he go? Yes, he went to Argentina, and so I don't know where he went in Argentina, but he went to Argentina, and went to the government and said, "Hey, I've built this station out there can you guys should let me take some of your guys out there, and you can measure Antarctica weather conditions." And then, in a few months, you can go get them or something. And so I said, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. They made him a big hero. They all went marching out. And when they got there, they had brought their postcards with them. And so they stamped the postcards for this location and handed them to Bruce and his crew, who went off to the Faroes. Not the Faroes. The Falklands, out to the Falkland Islands, for some reason that's where his boat had to go. So he transports these postcards, and that establishes this place as belonging to Argentina. And so, but Bruce's idea was that we're going to have scientists working all around Antarctica measuring, daily recordings and stuff. And so this was the first one. But during World War II, the Brits were starting to freak out that that Argentina owned Port Lockroy and not them. So they, instead of sending a ship to transport more people in the war, they outfitted it to go all the way to the bottom of the world to drop off these 6, 7, 8 scientists to do science and to build the research station, basically just to plant the flag, because they didn't bother to want to publish any of the scientists' works. And it was a secret mission where there was no fanfare when the scientists returned 3 years later and stuff. But it all began with Bruce setting this stuff up. Okay, how do we get to the next? There we go. And so here is Mackenzie Lamb, who was he's a lichenologist, and he was one of the scientists stationed out there at Lockroy for, they were there for 2 winters, but one was at Lockroy, I think one was somewhere else. And he's written this wonderful account, and yet if you Google Lockroy and Mackenzie Lamb, they say there's nothing there. There's no connection between those two. They're publishing this book down there in Lockroy, and it's called The Secret South because it was kept a secret. And so it's just remarkable survival and camaraderie and getting through the winters and stuff. And then Mackenzie goes back and he gets a position at Harvard as being a great lichenologist and becomes the keeper of the Farlow Herbarium here at Harvard. And he decides to become a she because he divorces his wife and becomes Elke Mackenzie. And so Elke was, well, she went away for a while, and then she came back, and I think she died in the late 90s here in Cambridge. Just phenomenal. If you can ever get it, it's just great. So with that, we depart from Antarctica, back on the ship, wave goodbye to the penguins, pick our way through incredible landscapes. Yeah, I want to go back to that Lockroy picture because that was just amazing. Here, okay, so you see the houses and you see this land. Well, this black thing, that is solid rock. And that is on an island that's behind. So this little island is Lockroy, and then this island has this huge mountain on it that is coming through the fog there as this looming blackness. And just the scale of, how many stories is that? When it's so far away, you just can't tell. So it's just such an incredibly massive landscape. And so this is sailing around Anvers Island to, and then we're going to turn north between these islands. And the finest photography night, day opportunity of the whole time I was in Antarctica was that last night, leaving Antarctica, just this amazing cloud shapes and light. And there's our captain, Hiss, wearing a full, down jacket, because he said everyone else, oh, you guys can go below, the work is done. And I'm going, are you kidding? This is the most phenomenal time. This is what we came for, was to be sailing. Sailing Antarctica. And there's a humpback whale heading out from the Gerlach through the islands into the Drake. And those lights, there's a light there just off the bow, I think. And these two lights, these are all cruise ships that are coming and going. And, when we got to Lockroy, we couldn't go ashore right away because there was a cruise ship there. And the good captain had taken the workers from Lockroy to lunch on his boat. And then he took his staff to go for a launch ride with the workers back to Lockroy. So we had to wait. But normally, they're just passing the night. And when you're in these vast landscapes, I'm always reassured by other signs of humanity. I was sailing the North Sea, and I like seeing well, we're out of time. So there we go. And here we are back in Lockroy. We're back in Porto Williams. And that is my fabulous voyage from back here in the Beagle Channel, back in Chile. And that's the fabulous voyage of to Port Lockroy and back again, South Shetland Islands, Antarctica. So thank you all for tuning in one more time to What We Should Know. I'm going to be putting some information about the cruise and maybe outtakes of this video at theoceanriver.org.